I resist the word legacy. I resist it because I don't fully understand it. And I feel it to be a very bizarre thing to fight for. That doesn't mean I'm right. That's just a personal feeling whenever I hear that, and whenever I hear about these athletes who were fortunate enough to play a game into their adulthood. That's a fair statement by me, right? I mean, games are for kids. If you're able to play one as an adult, there's some good fortune there. Some good luck. I'm sure it came with some discipline and some focus and the right coaching and the right training, but you also had things go your way. You had some good DNA. I think we can slip those in there. So when a professional athlete who's playing a game late in his life then wants to talk about his legacy, how he's going to be remembered for years and decades to come into the future, I can't help but scratch my head and go, man, that's weird. You're already in a fortunate spot. Now you have to worry about how you're going to be remembered and be talked about. It's just a very weird, I resist the concept. The ego involved in that is to a level that I find off-putting. But that seems to be largely what this fight's about. And for me, this fight's just a lot of fun. And it's a cash grab in some ways. It's meant to bring in attention. It's meant to bring in headlines. You got the light heavyweight champ bumping up to take on the heavyweight champ. I like it. I get it. It's enough for me. When the athletes start talking about legacy, they start pushing me away just a little bit. And not only for the reasons I just brought up, but when you start talking about legacy and you start worrying about legacy, you're traditionally talking about almost being done. You're talking about the older guys that start to wonder and worry about where will their place be? Will they be remembered? Will they be recognized? Will fans have a positive reaction to them? Which serves as a different form of commodity. Right now, they are fighting for a commodity known as U.S. dollars. But there's another commodity out there known as appreciation and how you're remembered. And that weighs on some guys. For me, as a buyer, as a consumer, as a retail customer, that's off-putting because you're telling me that the end is near. That's how I'm interpreting that. And a lot has been made of why Daniel Cormier isn't in consideration for the greatest of all time. And should he beat Stipe, will he be in consideration for greatest of all time? Which, again, we're talking about legacy. I can answer you the question directly, which is yes, of course, Daniel Cormier is one of the greatest of all times. With or without this win, he is one of the greatest of all times. The reason why he is not recognized as that really just comes down to twofold. First off, he's not an intimidating and scary guy. He doesn't have an intimidating and scary look. One of the reasons that Mike Tyson is so remembered today isn't because of that uppercut. It isn't for being the youngest heavyweight champion of all time, which a lot of you either didn't know or you've forgotten. As meaningful as that should be in his career and for his legacy, most of you forgot that that happened or you didn't even know to start with. So it wasn't for those reasons. It was because he was very intimidating. He had those beady little eyes, and he'd put them on you, and he looked ice cold. And when he did interviews, they were mean-spirited. And when he would talk about his youth, he'd talk about the streets of Brooklyn, growing up and mugging people. And he was just a very scary, scary figure, which brought an intimidation, which brought a respect along with it. Daniel Cormier is a very nice guy, and he's soft-spoken, and he doesn't do some of those things. So he's not going to get those benefits that somebody like Mike Tyson would have gotten. So then what's it come down to? Well, then it comes down to taking out the man. If you're ever going to be remembered in the sport, and that's any sport, you've got to take out the man. You can't just come along and beat everybody, and you got a bunch of guys your same age, and you're all coming up, and it's like a bracket, and somebody advances, and they finally get to the championship match, and you win. I'm talking about to be respected and be looked at and be in the conversation for the GOAT. I'm not saying that this is fair. I'm telling you this is how these things happen. And if you can come up and come along and take out the man, it can do really good things for you. Daniel didn't do that. He beat a couple of number twos. He beat a bunch of number threes. That is a remarkable accomplishment. And then he became number one himself. He may do that with Stipe and become number one yet again in another division. And this isn't even counting the Strikeforce Grand Prix that he won in the heavyweight class. He is an amazingly accomplished and decorated resume of an athlete, for sure. But when people will sit down and have the conversation of why isn't he looked at as the GOAT, sometimes they're not able to identify. The guys that are looked at as the GOAT, which is a make-believe conversation, there is no championship, there is no title, there's no tournament, there's no bracket you can enter called the GOAT tournament, meaning if you come out of it, you win that. So he's not able to do that with his athletic abilities. He has to do that with perception, which is all that is, which is why it's a ridiculous topic, but it just won't go away. We have the same thing with the pound-for-pound list, which is essentially saying what the GOAT is just of that current time frame, which is ridiculous. There is no title or tournament or event that you can enter to prove with your skills one way or the other. It's just perception, and perception lies with guys that are, one, either intimidating, or two, gets handed to guys that beat the man. And Daniel didn't do those things. The man at 205 was 205 pounds. Those fights didn't go his way. There's a huge asterisk as to why. There's a huge reasoning as to justifying a rubber match in a part 3. But until those things happen, he's just kind of left with perception, which for reasons as unfair as they may be, do not crown him in that spot. So I think that it is a very meaningful weekend for him. And it seems like the pressure, because of that, has been put on Stipe. That this is Stipe's title to defend, and it's Daniel's title to win. That seems like a fair storyline. That seems to be the one that I'm buying into. I think you guys would agree with me. But that's what's really at stake here.